So now I can die happy. But it didn't always used to be that way. I've lived a very good life so far. I am blessed to have grown up in a loving family, loving parents. My mom's here to join me tonight. To have found a loving wife. To have had a loving relationship with my brother, still do. To have our 3 beautiful children. To have had the opportunity for good education, for sports, for extracurriculars. And in recognizing that opportunity, I've wholly recognized that I have had privilege in my life. I have had opportunity that some people do not get. Now, I have worked extremely hard alongside that opportunity to make the most of it. But I still felt that I wasn't doing enough. My twins were born in early 2016. Late 2016, I took on full-time fatherhood after paternity leave. It's what was best for our family, and I'm grateful for that opportunity. But what happened shortly thereafter, and this had little to do with, staying at home with my kids, because frankly, I'd always wanted to be a dad, and I was having a great time with that element. But I started asking myself this question of, what was I going to do for the balance of my career? I'm a professional engineer by trade. I consult, and I'd had some success in that. But even as fulfilled as I found the first part of my career, somewhere in the 70 to 80% range, if we're going to measure, I was wondering if there could be more. Now, for there to be more, I needed to know what the direction should be for my life, and for that I needed to identify what it is that I valued in my life. I'd never asked myself that question before, and I've since met so many people who've not yet asked that question of themselves, or who unfortunately have never been asked that question by others. And I didn't know. I was scared that I did not know myself well enough to know where I wanted to go next. I was scared that I had already wasted so much opportunity. I was scared that I would continue to waste parts of my life and do less with what I had than people with less than what I had did. So I felt like in many cases I didn't deserve the chances I had. As much as I cared about people, as hard as I worked, I still felt I could be doing more, but I wasn't sure how I would do it. So in early 2017, I fell into about 4 months of depression. And here's what that looked like for me. Most nights, I'd lie down on my living room floor, and I'd look up at the ceiling. It's a textured ceiling, so it's at least somewhat interesting. Half the nights I would cry. I'd be there for an hour and a half, awake, quiet. It was really 4 months of quiet. I guess that's the best way to describe it. And then I realized that I didn't have to have all of the answers to start building. I didn't have to have all of the answers to get up. I just needed to take action. And it didn't have to be some bold, big new action. It just had to be the first step. But taking that first step was extremely frightening. What if I took the wrong first step? But one of the nice things about, I guess, what I had learned or reflected on in those 4 months is that I knew I didn't have to just take the step. I had to change who I felt I was, to know that I was someone who did take steps, who did take action, that was part of my identity. So I did start to build. Now, at first, I didn't really know what I was building. I have some better idea now. But one of the ways that I needed to, like, again, somewhat analytically minded, I tried to define what it is that I valued. I tried to list it. What are the top 5 things, aspects of life I care about? Well, how much do I care about each? How do I break ties? This is something that's inherently qualitative. It's something that we just feel. How do we put a number to it? Turns out you can do that through using the units of time rather than money. I'll dispense with the details, but in figuring out what I cared about, I was then able to make decisions that were in line with those values. I was able to make regret-proof decisions. This started really opening my eyes. Regret is this problem that we all face. It's universal in that sense, except what's strange about it is that it is different for all of us. We all value different things. We've all had different experiences. We've all had different behaviors. We've all had different relationships. And it just sits differently for each of us. How was I possibly going to figure this out for myself and never mind anyone else? But it was in that process that I started to regain a little bit of confidence. Confidence that at least I was taking action to figure it out. Now, I guess what came next was a long, long period of building these ideas together and talking with people about these ideas and seeing what resonated and launching a bit of a podcast. And I've let that go quiet, but it was really instrumental in building up some of the ideas. And what was really I guess, self-nurturing was this idea that I didn't have to have all the answers. But what I found was one of the biggest hurdles I was trying to get over was that in early 2018, I'd actually reflected back on my life and estimated that 81% of my life, since birth, had been scheduled. 19% had not. That was 55,203 hours, or 6.3 years that I'd looked at my life, and I looked at that time as time that I had wasted. Time that I had not intentionally planned on how I would spend that aligned with my values, because I didn't know what those were at the time. Now, what really pained me about that was that I knew I could not get that time back. None of us can. I felt this deep sense of regret that I could do nothing about, or so I thought. What I could do, maybe, this glimmer of hope, was that maybe I could help others identify what it is that they value, to name it, to weight it, and to apply it in the decision-making that they had in their life, and how it is that they chose to spend and balance their time now. When I started having conversations with people in this regard, I was floored at the outcomes. I would ask every person a single question at the end of my time serving them. And that question was, over the course of your life, how much less time will you regret for having known who you are, having defined it, having weighted it, and having applied that knowledge, as opposed to have continued along the direction that you've had, not having given yourself the permission to be who you are and to keep pursuing success by other people's standards? The answers people gave me were on the order of years. This was mind-blowing to me. By November 9th, 2018, so about 11 months later, I had managed to erase that 6.3-year deficit. Achieved my first life goal of having lived a fully intentional life. To have made up that debt, to have paid it back, as it were. What was next? Well, I've gotten back up to 0. What can I build above that? What if I were to try to create my lifetime worth of value in other people's lives? Let's say 80 years. Maybe 80 years is my life expectancy. If I could give 80 years of time to other people in their lives for what they value, it's not about what I value, for what they value, then I could live a fully given life to give myself to others. Now, it was a stretch goal, and I didn't really know when that would come about, but I was extremely fortunate and grateful to have met some really inspiring people this year, and by December 20th, 2019, so about a month ago, I crossed that mark. I've saved people over 86 years now of time in their lives, and I feel like I've leveled up in my dedication to serving others. Maybe it's what I had done all along, but I didn't necessarily have that mindset. Now it is strictly about other people. And what I've come to realize is that what we value, how we feel, and how other people feel, that is our end game. That's our goal. Anything tangible, money, time, freedom, tables, chairs, microphones, lights, cars, houses, all of it. Those are all means. None of them are the ends. The ends are how we feel. And when we focus on serving other people empathetically and virtuously for what they care about, we will be just fine in terms of being able to survive. In our service of others, empathetic service of others, we will be just fine. So, what I encourage you to consider today is, how are you saving other people time? Would people trade time for the experiences they have with you? Have you been worth their time? Can you be worth their time even more? For me, it has taken a long time to come to terms with who I am and the struggles I continue to face, because this is never over. But I know that in taking those first steps, even if they are blind, I have begun to think of myself as someone who does take steps. And it doesn't stop. And that's how it should be. So, I know that when we all take these steps together and we all serve each other, that society will work better. We'll see shared goals. We'll serve each other, help each other level up, and all be better off for it. One vulnerable month on the floor thinking about what we want at a time. Thank you.
Thank you.